educators and parents need to know what to look for. What does it look like when a child is out of the optimum zone, let's say? So no longer in the zone where healthy self-regulation is happening, so that learning and behavior is easy, because that's the bottom line, really. Learning and behavior, adaptive pro-social behavior, these things are completely natural when we're in this optimum zone of arousal, when it's, arousal is neither too high, where we're too agitated, or too low, where we're too disengaged. So we need to watch for the signs. What does it look like in the classroom, on the playground, at home, in interactions with others, when our children are not in that zone of optimum arousal, when self-regulation is, let's say, deregulated? So I help them to understand what that looks like, and some of what it looks like is what people want to call ADHD. Now here's what's really going on, is it's all getting pathologized. So the most important point I want to make to parents and teachers, to all of us, to us who are, to those of us who are struggling with our own pathologies, okay? It's not pathological. These are the natural responses of the brain and the body to unnatural events. It is unnatural for us to experience some of the things that we face, that we do experience as children and as adults, right? What are some of those things? We know the obvious, right? Abuse situations of any kind that terrorize us or terrify us, right? Any kind of a life-threatening situation, which can be a routine dental procedure, can feel life-threatening to someone. I mean, who doesn't have, so many people have dental trauma, but they minimize it. What they don't understand is that the anxiety provoked in that routine dental procedure, that they're then left feeling really scared of dental procedures, that's arousal that's stuck in the body that they're now carrying around with them everywhere they go. It doesn't go anywhere, right? Unless we process it and work in a supported way to move through it, to allow that arousal to come up and move through us, right? So anything that can be life-threatening. We know for children, for example, that routine medical procedures, surgeries, hospitalizations, and injuries can be as traumatic for them as veterans coming back from war. They can have full-blown post-traumatic stress responses after being in the hospital, sometimes being isolated, sometimes they have a virus and they're left in a room alone, or they're taken from their parents for treatments, or certainly when these procedures involve restraint. Because what happens is the animal brain gets nudged into survival, right? They're terrified that they're being taken, that they're in this scary place with these scary people and they don't know what's going to happen to them. So their arousal goes way high. They go into a fight or flight response, and then they're restrained. So instead of being able to fight off these people or flee and take off and get out of this situation, that big fat survival energy is instead restrained, and it's left stuck in the body. And that is why then symptoms show up later on. And sometimes it can be months, even years later, decades later for some. Some of the people I work with in private practice, just in the last 10 years, they're connecting that some of what they've been experiencing in these last 10 years is really about what happened to them 20 years before that. So symptoms lie dormant sometimes. The energy is dormant because we're good at numbing, avoiding, delaying. We're good at running from, but eventually it catches up with us and the symptoms show up, and then we're left with a dysfunctional life, difficult relationships, not being able to connect in a healthy way. We feel lonely, we feel alienated from ourselves and from others, and life isn't working, right? And sometimes some of us don't get to that until we're in our 50s and 60s, where we realize it's not working. What am I running from? And a lot of it is this stuck energy that we were good at avoiding, or numbing, and it's not working for us anymore, right? Our coping mechanisms are no longer working for us. What I'm talking about, the work, somatic kinds of approaches that help us to really heal this energy, heal these so-called symptoms, is really about us being able to connect with our bodies again in a safe way, and recognize that we can connect, we can feel what's going on from the neck down. We don't have to run from it. It doesn't have to be a scary place, but there's a whole process to that. So I want to get back to the fact that we can't be pathologizing what these behaviors look like, because it can look like ADHD, right? When we're over aroused, it can look like we're hyper, and maybe there's a pill for that, right? We want to put somebody on a pill, want to give it a label, or maybe it's when it's in that under aroused pattern, well, maybe it's depression, and we can give a pill for that. Or if it's these kids in class, they're sleeping 1 minute in the under aroused pattern, and the next one, they're up accusing their neighbor of something, they've got paranoia and suspicion, and they're in the over aroused pattern. They go back and forth, and that looks like bipolar. Maybe there's a pill for that, right? We've got all these ways of pathologizing. And in fact, we have oppositional defiance disorder, which is really more of a freeze state, right? If we want to really get into this in a deeper way, what do we have? We have fight or flight, and if we can't do either, right? So if we can't fight, and our children, how are our children going to fight off their predators, their captors, their, whoever it is that's injuring them in this terrifying way? How are they going to fight that person off? They're a child, they're a baby, they're right. So they can't fight, right? A lot of them can't flee. Where are they going? Where are they going? That doesn't feel any safer to do, because they're dependent on these people or this person or this place that is supposed to be a resource for them. So they can't run. So what do our babies do? What do our babies do? What do so many of our children do? And what do we even do in certain situations when our brain decides in milliseconds that this is how we're going to survive? We freeze, right? Our children go into a freeze state, and not consciously, but in milliseconds, the brain, the animal brain that is all about our survival, decides that freezing and just standing here and not doing a thing is what is most likely going to lead to our survival. So we go into this freeze state. Well, that's exactly what we're pathologizing now, is this oppositional defiant disorder in children, because they're being asked to do something, right? And when they're asked to do something, let's really dissect this. When they're being asked to do something, what part of the brain is required to be able to understand what's being asked of them? A neocortex, right? The neocortex, okay, for our babies is way underdeveloped. They don't have a fully developed neocortex until they're in their mid-20s. They don't have mastery of language. But when they have all this arousal in them, the truth is when arousal's really high, which it is for so many of these children, right? They've had these experiences with extreme stress or trauma. The brain gets changed. The brain gets changed in a very specific way. What happens is a message gets sent to the animal brain to go on, right? To be in fight, flight, or freeze. This big energy gets elicited. Now, when the threat is gone, then the animal brain calms back down, right? And when the animal brain calms back down, then we have greater access to the neocortex. So stay with me here. It feels like I'm moving around, but it's all going to connect. I want to tell you about the amygdala, because it's deep in the feeling brain. It's a little nub deep in this limbic brain or feeling brain. And it's the amygdala that acts like a smoke screen in the brain to determine in milliseconds whether or not we should be afraid, whether or not we should feel threatened and go into this fight or flight response. So when the amygdala decides, and I'm doing this because we actually know what the amygdala sounds like when it fires. The amygdala fires its message of fear down to the animal brain to go into fight or flight. And it also sends a message up to the neocortex, right? What we need to be fully present and functioning in a healthy way for school, right? But it sends its message up to the neocortex to shut down. Because what did I say about that gut instinct earlier? When you have a gut instinct for survival, right? It's telling you, gosh, I don't feel good. I gotta run. I gotta get out of here, right?